Want to do away with the pain of your childhood trauma once and for all? Hey guys, this is Nilanjana. I'll be posting a video every week to help you rise above all the mess that you acquired from growing up in a home of pain and trauma for so many years, or maybe a couple of years, so that you discover who it is you really, really, really are beyond everything that you have ever known about yourself. Stay tuned and please click the subscribe button right here so that you don't miss any of my future videos, and make sure that you click the bell icon as well so that you are always notified when I publish a new video. So here we go with the first one. Enjoy. If you hail from a home of trauma, it is very likely that you're carrying a voice inside of your head that keeps judging you all the time. If you haven't recognized this video is going to be useful for you. And if you have recognized this video will also provide you with the solution tips that I applied in order to not only overcome this voice, but to realize its real nature, what exactly it is, what you will probably never be told from any source around. What the hell is this voice that's inside? So, how do you recognize the presence of an inner critic inside your mind? Well, think about how often you judge yourself, or how many times you keep second guessing yourself throughout the day. Maybe it's some project you've undertaken, or maybe it's something as plain as a conversation with a human. Anybody. How many times do you judge yourself throughout the day? You might do it, you might consider it healthy. However, for some people, there's one thing for certain, that even if they haven't made a distinction about this inner voice inside that's constantly judging them, they've come to a point that they tend to paralyze themselves as a result of listening to the commands of something inside their heads whenever they are switching to make any decision for themselves. Perhaps it is deciding to talk to somebody and assert something that's on their minds, or if it is about doing something that they have always wanted to do, which breaks barriers of everything they have ever learned. Every single undertaking or every single stepping out of comfort zone that you undertake, in whatever little way that may be for you, do you hear a crippling voice inside telling you or halting your progress and telling you that you can't do it? Or are you so crippled by a voice inside? Maybe it's you're not aware that it's a voice, but are you so crippled that the very moment that you give rise to thoughts inside your mind about what it is you would like in your life, like to have in your life, the kind of person you'd like to surround yourself with, the kind of job you'd like to do, whenever you try it, do you instantly give up the possibility of even conceiving, making the first advance in that direction? Because if that's what you're doing, there is a voice inside of your head that is so strong, that has so strengthened in its judgmental character, that it now prevents you from even getting up on your feet to make the first step. The very moment you give rise to a thought about doing something that steps out of your comfort zone, anything, it could be as simple as talking to the girl on the street, that very moment this voice leaps in your head, completely off the radar of your consciousness, and starts to quietly shrink you back to your comfort core, stating you're not worthy. It might not be stating in actual words, in which case you might not be knowing that there is an actual unworthy feeling or a whisper or a fizzle or a hiss that's playing in the background that's drawing you back the moment you conceive the idea. That's how deep this goes. That's how deep uh, an inner critic can play its role inside your mind to the point where you don't even know it exists. So, what I want you to do is that you sit with yourself for a while and ponder over this matter several times a day if necessary. Look at the different times when you wanted to do something, and the very moment you gave birth to doing it, whatever be it, it may not be a big project or starting a new career. Nothing of that may not be as florid as that. It might be even small things about maybe speaking to your parent and telling the person what it is you really want when your parent might not know about it. Whatever. Whenever, sit and think and recall all those times when you just conceive the idea of doing something else, and that very moment an enormous judgment blew all possibilities off your face, and to the point where you didn't even bother making any advance in that direction. I'll be honest, some amount of self-doubt comes through in our lives, everybody's life, even in the lives of people who come from healthy homes. However, for the ones who hail from homes of tremendous pain like I did, a lot of bickering flung at you, a lot of judgments flung at you, you never being accepted for who it is you really are, a lot of violence seen in front of you. For people like you, as you grow older, you will see that there will be a lot of conflicting thoughts, which you may or may not be aware of, that will halt progress in your life every time. This inner critic might bare its teeth in a different way than I just described. It might come in the form of a consequence of an interaction with a human. You might have interacted and you might have made an error. That's when the inner critic starts barking inside of you and keeps finger pointing at you, stating that you are worthless or that you are guilt-stricken, and that's how you'll always be, and you cannot emerge from it, and that you're going to beat yourself up no matter what. Why does this voice spike up in all of us? Even in those amongst you who come from such homes and who are seemingly confident in their lives right now, but who may have felt that there's something missing in their lives and hence have landed into my channel. Even for those of you who are seemingly confident despite coming from traumatic homes, try to examine your lives. Are there times when you have this inner critic bouncing here and there inside of you, telling you you're not good enough? It could be as subtle as disliking a friend's success, in which case, if you don't feel exhilarated as your friend who has acquired the success, there is a voice inside which you may not recognize but might start to appreciate with my words. There's that voice inside which silently slithers and fills your mind with a feeling of unworthiness. Have you ever asked where that voice comes from? Why did it even take birth? Why? What is it doing here? For some of you, it might be a memory of the voice that your mom or dad flung at you by judging you all the time. For many others of you, you may not even recognize the source. Where the hell did it come from? You might wonder. Because the trauma that you may have experienced might just have been seeing violence at home, played out in front of your eyes. Your mom being beaten, mom being slapped, mom being humiliated over and over again. But if that was happening outside of you, amongst them, why did you acquire an inner critic? Have you ever wondered? Let's first understand why this inner critic is doing this. When you saw a lot of pain in your childhood, or in your early adulthood, or in your past life experiences, all the time you were betrayed. You were literally robbed of a continuous experience of peace around you. Whenever you grasp that a peace has arrived and you leaped into the complete joy and blissful moment, it was taken away from you. And this happened over and over again, over a span of years, maybe decades. And because you were consistently betrayed from what you really wanted, from the possibility of a consistence of that peace, which is what we all desire, because you were consistently beaten out of it, betrayed out of it, a voice developed right here to make you survive. Literally, to make you survive. When you see so much pain being inflicted on a parent whom you dearly love, all the time in front of your eyes, for whatever reasons that was happening, you start to feel helpless. It's an absolutely unavoidable feeling. In order to protect yourself from that feeling of helplessness, which would eventually have to arrive if violence was being staged at your home over and over again, this inner critic comes through and sets a closure for you, stating that you are anyways unworthy of handling this matter. So why feel helpless? It's a way to help the child survive in the mind with the chaotic circumstances that fate had decided for it. So now you understand? If you have come from a home of violence, this inner critic was decided so you would not have to cook up ways or to devise ways to help that helpless parent when you knew you couldn't help her, because helping him or her was beyond your capacity at that age. Or maybe it is still beyond your capacity. So this inner critic took birth inside your ego and decided to catastrophize so that you're exempted from the necessary burden of having to heal that parent or help him or her, which actually was not your responsibility to begin with. Neither was within your capacity to handle with the presence of an abusive person around. So basically, you were being helped the whole time with that critic inside of your head. It is only years later now that you realize that the critic hasn't really helped you. In fact, if anything at all, it is hampering your progress in life because it's still playing out in your head. So how do you overcome it? Recall my video on how to stop being a perfectionist. Recall what I said in that video, that there is a constant judgment that adults who grew up in homes of a lot of pain, a lot of judgment that these adults fling on themselves. And that leads to this perfectionism tendency, which society very wrongly cherishes, when in fact it is a veneer over underlying insecurity. So in little ways, this judgment, inner judgment, is constantly playing out in your lives and giving rise to a plethora of coping mechanisms. Perfectionism is just one of them. There are so many others that I can think of. And your progress is absolutely hampered. You're second guessing yourself and you're beating yourself up non-stop with the slightest bit of normal errors. Any error, let me intervene here and state this, any error doesn't require you to carry the guilt that it gives rise to forward. Guilt is only to serve a momentary purpose of telling you what direction you are required to take, as opposed to the one you have taken the whole time. But this inner critic keeps you stuck to the guilt inside because it foolishly believes that in doing so, it will be protecting you from the pain of unbelievable disillusionment, which it believes is round the corner, which it believes the world will eventually provide you. However, you see, this is really not the truth. Because just because you saw violence in a place and so much pain in your certain surroundings, a certain surrounding you grew up with, there is actually a lot of joy and peaceful people out there around as well, which you may not have stumbled upon yet. Besides, you were never anything this inner voice spoke of you the whole time. You never were any of the judgments that were flung at you. Maybe your actions were wrong at times. And yet, if the inner critic is stating that you are unworthy, that you are incapable of moving ahead with your life, that's absolute bullshit. Why would you listen to that? You were born enough and worthy. That's how every child is born. Why not understand that now? Why won't you preserve that? For me, it was so difficult to separate the truth of who it is I was from all the judgments that I flung at myself for ages that I embarked on a journey about 2 to 3 years back when I first started discovering how damaged I was as a result of the circumstances I grew up in. It was a very difficult journey, and it's still incomplete. Gladly, I've made a few nuances of transformation into my life. I've brought in, yes, but I have ages to go. And yet, as I learn, I would like to share how it is I help myself in whatever little way I could so far. Let me hope that it helps you. It was extremely difficult for me for a very long time, even after I secured the first glimpse of the degree of impact my upbringing had on me. It was extremely difficult for me to understand who it is I was. If all that my mind carried around my head were judgments, where the hell was I? What was my truth? What was true for me? I realized that people who grew up in homes where their genuine personality, what they are grown up, their soulful personality, what's inside of them, what was never cherished. In my case, the people who grew up in such homes, this truth of theirs is nurtured by their caregivers. Whereas in my case, while I received a lot of love and support, I realized I was very damaged in my head as a result of all the pain that I saw and all the yellings that were flung at me, even if they were flung at goodwill. It was very dysfunctional, and it absolutely hampered any emergence of the truth or any reflection of my truth on my external self. Nothing showed. I never acted as who I really was. I constantly lived in terror, absolutely sunk in a massive pile of judgments stating, no, you're not good enough. No, don't talk to that person, that's not good. No, you don't deserve this, don't go there. No, this person won't like you, don't do that. What the hell? No, don't do this. He'll get annoyed. Consistently downplaying my truth. The fact that the truth inside of me even existed was something that was blindsided to me. I didn't even know there was something called truth. It was only the discovery that there was discovery of so many judgments inside of me that the horrific question began to arise inside. Who the hell am I? If the judgments, what I believed as me, aren't me, who the hell am I? Russian esotericist P.D. Uspensky, in his book called The Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution. This is a book I read recently. In his book, he states, he refers to man as a machine. He states that man functions as a result of impressions that the external world left on him. In fact, man cannot even function if no external movement ever happened. You may wonder, what if I stay in a still room and nothing is moving about me, and there is nothing in the external world that is leaving an impression inside? I'll correct you and state that you're wrong. Even in an empty room that's still and nothing's moving, the impression of the elements in the room are what in the external field are leaving an impression inside of you. So there you go. That stillness is the impression that's left in your mind. Essentially, if there weren't any impressions in the external world, you would cease to produce any kind of movement as a human. You wouldn't. And nothing would exist inside of you. You would be unmoving and you would be life would come to a standstill. However, that is only theoretically conceived. There is no practical possibility. And yet, his claim stands to hold a solid ground that man is a machine, that he is mechanical, largely, in the way he operates. It's very difficult for someone who has not entered into personal development to understand this right away. For me, it was extremely difficult to understand. I had to reread his book several times to grasp what he meant. And I have to tell you, for someone who's journeying into the personal development pathway, he or she will all at once, start to contradict what it is I stated. That man being considered as someone who is mechanical is impossible because there is an I right here that is controlling it all. That's the justification that we unconscious people, most unconscious people, I will exclude myself from this because now I've figured it out, but yeah, my past self and other unconscious people out there will state, they will justify themselves by saying, that's impossible, that we can't be mechanical because there is a I that is controlling it all. The knowledge of your mechanical self is really essential to understanding that there is no I figure inside of you, no I figure inside of you that is existent, that everything that I right now have termed as the inner critic is really just an impression that your outside world has left in you, and that you are operating out of a conscious, focused attention into that impression. But in fact, it was just a fragment that the world around you gave to you. But truly, deeply understanding your mechanical self requires you to explore the wholeness of who you are, which currently almost 99% of the people in the world, or maybe a little less, who knows, maybe a little more, 99% of the people in the world have no clue about. You will understand as I give you this example. Throughout my process of awakening, there was one constant that was hard put on refusing to decline around my head, and that was unsurpassable for a very, very long time. And this was the constant bobbing and rising and falling of emotions and memories and negative um, im- imprints that were left by these emotions that constantly swirled around my head and formed a sort of a mental cloud, kind of a bubble that existed around my head the whole time and refused to disappear, no matter what amount of healing work I did. And it took me a while to finally make sense of its presence in my head, to understand that this was not only was it impossible to be with them unquestioned, it was also as impossible to remove them while keeping them around. Now let's understand that everything in these bubbles that around our heads, especially for adults who have healed from homes full of a lot of trauma, these bubbles in our heads, they're illusions. They're they're absolute illusions, and there's no truth to whatever they are projecting to you today. They had been happening once upon a time, but today they aren't. So let's understand that they are illusions. However, it is really difficult, and I completely appreciate if you agree with me on this. It is really difficult to be with these emotions and with these thoughts and emotions, the imprints of your past, and to just live along with them unquestioned. The bubble stays on and it continues to distract you from reality itself. For those of you who aren't aware of this mental bubble around you, you will need to connect with some of these examples that I'm going to share. A lot of these examples will resonate with you, and you start to question if you too are carrying a bubble around your head that you weren't aware of this whole time, that you integrated with so much that you started to believe that the bubble, that there was no such thing as a bubble, that you were it, everything that the bubble stated to you. Let's come to these examples. Say, for example, you're going to work. Early morning, you wake up, and there's a sense of sadness you feel for no reason. It might not happen in early morning time period, but it might happen in the middle of work as well. A sense of sadness, the origin of which is hard to place a finger on. And you're not sure where this negative emotion is coming from. And you can't label, you can't connect it to any painful instance in your recent life. It could range from simple things like what used to appeal to you as a child no longer appeals to you anymore. What you were all ecstatic about as a child no longer appeals to you anymore. Not about toys, but say, for example, a simple pleasure of being in nature. If that's not appealing to you as much anymore, there you have it. There's a mental cloud that's playing around you, and you aren't aware that it's there. Or, for instance, even when you're talking to somebody, or maybe in quiet pauses in conversations, you have strange negative emotions that come through. Sometimes it's not even negative, it's more of a sinking, void, vacant, empty sensation, a desire to flee from something, a desire for security, a desire to feel better, that desire of constant joy, which you feel is just beyond your grasp. Do you have these feelings coming through at different points of the day in your life, and you aren't aware where they keep coming from? Take a good look at yourself. The reason you're here is because you want to feel blissed out all the time. You want to help yourself through. However, until and unless you're taking a good look at yourself, it becomes difficult. It will become difficult for you to make any progress with this work. Hence, I recommend that you take a good look at your state of being at different points in the day. try from today itself, from this point onwards, tomorrow and thereafter. Are you absolutely in a state of exhilaration the whole time? Or do you have scattered moments of emptiness, a void, or perhaps a state of it just doesn't feel right, right? Or better identifiers, I'd say, as is the case for me, you have scattered emotions or scattered images of disapprovals from home or traumatic scenes from home which play like background music in the empty spaces in your daily schedule, in which case you can already see what part of the this mental bubble is evident to you, but you may not have distinguished as a mental bubble yet. It's very common for people who hail from such homes. Little fragments of past conversations, the difficult ones, little fragments of disapprovals, smaller things, little fragments of yellings, little fragments of a negative state of being, little bickerings, a lot of criticism, and a lot of hating one another that keep flooding your mind through and through. Notice a distinct state of difference that you possess and others who hail from homes that are calmer and quieter possess. There's a different state of being that you have and they have. I have a friend who stays far off from the place where I stay. When I meet him, I'm able to notice this distinction in our energy levels. He is always in a state of joy, and that doesn't show in the form of laughter and gleefulness or any of that, but you can feel the energy of being at peace inside. He's non reactive. He is not in the state of contraction as I am very often. While I am constantly seeking for a way to feel better all the time through meditation, healing, therapy. When I asked him about this, he never seeks any of these treatments ever. And yet, if you spend a day with him, you will see the whole day he'll be doing things that cheerful people do. And he will not be doing it for fame. You will see it as his natural state of being. When asked in a private conversation with him about what he experienced when he was a kiddo, he stated he never experienced all that I did. In fact, he came from a very quiet, loving environment, and he's very lucky that he grew up with that. Very little materialistic possessions, but a lot of love and a lot of accepting people as the way they are is what he had, contrary to what I did. That's when I realized that all the time I'm just trying to get away from this mental bubble that's hard to wrestle with, but which refuses to leave even, and which follows us wherever we go. It even follows others who hail from calmer homes. The difference between us and them is we carry a mental bubble of bobbing emotions, thoughts, fragments of conversations, fragments of scenes, imageries, all of that, which don't feel good. And they refuse to leave even, no matter how much meditation you do. Whereas for these other people who came from normal homes, for them, they aren't able to make a distinction because even though they are sunk in their own mental bubbles, they're a lot more pleasant than ours. And it doesn't seem like a problem. First of all, understanding that this shell around your head, kind of like a helmet of past worn out emotions that keep bearing you down every now and then, This shell of emotions and thoughts and impressions of the past, however it makes you feel, this shell is valid, meaning don't try to push against it. Just understand the truth that in the moment of acquiring these impressions or giving birth to them because of circumstances surrounding you, that in that moment of acquiring them, of producing these impressions, that it was absolutely valid an emotion that came into being. Most of the pain that we acquire out of memories, out of the sad memories that keep flocking our mind, most of the pain that disturbs us is the resistance that we offer to these thoughts. The more resistance you offer to them, the more they bother you. This is something I had to understand over and over again to realize that it was absolutely okay to be somebody, to be considered as somebody who was forced to live such a life, at least for the first part of my life, was rejected, was yelled at, humiliated, had to see pain at home, and the ramifications that, the low self esteem ramifications that came of it. To accept that this is my reality, that I need not go seeking another's style of life constantly by working hard, making more money, by making plans of, oh, someday I'm going to prove them wrong, someday I'm going to go. By reaching that moment of accepting the whole thing as as my reality, by accepting that the emotions that I felt and I kept carrying along, that keep running around in circles inside my head, that these emotions have a place, that they're valid, that they can have my undivided love, and I don't have to look away from them anymore. They are tough to bear, I know, but let me give them a space which they have hungered for so long. So, the first thing that happens when you realize that you have such a shell of thoughts inside of you is that you want to resist it. Even for the ones who have just flashes of little memories of your childhood pain, the first thing that you do is try to resist it. I want you to do the exact opposite. I don't want you to do anything with it. I want you to see it come, see it reappear, while you look at it as if, while it wasn't okay for life to have treated you that way, you can still keep it as something that has happened, with the feelings that you produced in that moment as being required in that moment, and the memory of these feelings as absolutely having a place in the world. And now you can take a deep breath, knowing that these feelings and memories aren't to be disliked, aren't to be felt ashamed about, aren't to be pushed aside so that you can have a different life, the so called happier life, the so called peace loaded life, as you may have seen in some of your friends' homes, the ones who came from happier homes. What happens for most of us who hail from such homes is we are constantly seeking something better, something more, something out there, some kind of therapy that will take away or ward away all the evils in our head. Or perhaps something, some different life that we'll someday have that will do away with all the negative afflictions that life threw at us, constantly seeking. I notice my mind constantly seeking, constantly trying to overcome, constantly trying to improve, trying to be better. I'm telling you that I'm asking you to do the exact opposite. See that wherever it is you are right now, with all the anger that you feel, all the emotions, all these resurging emotions bobbing up and down and around all the time, see them as valid, see them as worthy of being there. Just like a child who has come into the world seeks love and acceptance, I want you to look and face at these emotions and give them the acceptance that they are seeking. And that requires actually looking at them and feeling them. So if you feel hatred, if you feel hurt, if you want to relive, if one of the emotion or memory is coming back to you, and all the emotions that it has tagged with it is coming back to you, I want you to immerse yourself fully into it, relive it, and see what emotions arise inside of you as a result. Feel it completely. Literally do this. Take some time out and sit with all the emotions that arise. There'll be all kinds of negativity. There'll be anger, aggression. You might want to break somebody's leg. Sit with all these emotions. There might be the urge to cry. Sit with that emotion. If you have to cry, cry. Stop pushing against it. Keep them there. Feel them fully. What you're doing whenever you're doing this is that you are trying to not seek a different way of being and in turn part from who it is that you are as a result of the circumstances that came your way. Most people who come from happier homes where trauma isn't a case, they are never doing this because they're always whole. And that's why you see them confident and exuding a marked level of self esteem, love for oneself, and a light which is very evident in their way of being. The thing that happens with ones who come from homes like these is we are either caught up in anger because of what life gave us. So we are constantly angry that we have this pain stuck in our head. We have this depression, this emotion, this negativity stuck in our head as a result of what life gave us, as a result of the abusive tendencies of people around us. So you are constantly trying to seek a different version of you when in fact you can't, because the emotions will always be there. So what I'm suggesting to you is stop trying to be what you aren't. Come back and immerse yourself in that which came through in your life, the emotions. This may sound like foolish because I am bringing you back to all the so called negative emotions. But I want you to know that just because you were given negativity in your life and negative emotions came through, that they formed the imprints in your life, the only way you can fully heal is not by becoming something you're not. For a long time, ever since you saw the first traumatic experience in your hometown, in your home, you had the first traumatic experience in your home, for a long time, you have been trying to escape not just the memory of that scene, but also how you felt in that scene. I want you to fully sink into what you felt in that scene. This is not going to lower your self esteem. Rather, it will help you become everything that you are. So that you are not stuck, so that you're no longer stuck in a self rejection process, which is what we are constantly doing if we have healed from such a home. Now that you've done that, now that you have fully immersed yourself in the emotions, now I will tell you one more thing. Realize that while the emotions are valid, the images that this shell creates around your head, it's just a concept, just an illusion. Just an illusion. Let it sink in, deeply sink in. So if you have a mind that is constantly telling you, constantly irritatingly bothering you with the idea, you have to do this, otherwise you will not be worthy. Or you are not worthy, you're not good enough for this. You're not good enough for your dream. You're not good enough for that person. Realize that since this thought is a propagation of beliefs that you acquired based on what you saw as a child, realize that these suggestions that your mind is making to you, it's just an illusion. The emotions that these beliefs leave you with over and over again, that leads you to feel bad every now and then, the emotions are valid. The thoughts and the beliefs are illusions. There's no truth to them. Moreover, understand this, that as you sink and sit with your emotions, all the negative ones, and as you let yourself cry, or maybe flood with anger and aggression, I really want you to do this. I'm not joking. You can turn off this video and do it. Sit with all these emotions. And as you do them, you will understand that while you may be immersed in emotions that feel unpleasant, you're still alive. Even though you had all these emotions, you're still alive. Knowing this, would you, from now on, run away from yourself and try to seek something better on the grounds of turning away from these emotions? Would you? Ask yourself. This is what has helped me the most. I learned it from a teacher online, and she taught me that your feelings that are stuck in this emotional shell that keep following you around everywhere and keep filling in the gaps of your life all the time, decades after decades. This these emotions were never looked at and were never entertained long enough, which is why they hunger for the attention that they deserve from the very beginning. This is part of the healing process for everybody who's experienced trauma. If you feel anger and you hate that feeling, say you feel anger towards your father for yelling at you, for not accepting you for the way you want, for the way you are. If you feel that anger towards your father, and right now, because you're feeling angry, you're irritated further on because you feel that he's responsible for that pain, for this emotion that has unpleasant emotion that has come out in you. If that's what you feel, then what you're doing is you're denying the emotion. You're trying to say that this emotion doesn't have a place. I want you to fully dip into the emotion and just sit there with it. So if you feel so much hate for your father that you want to yell bad things at him, do it. Alone, of course, not in front of him, but alone, yes. Understand that the feeling doesn't require the person to be around, but that the feeling has a place. And just because it's so unpleasant, you don't have to hate it. We are taught to hate our emotions. There is nothing wrong with this emotion, except that it's unpleasant. The reason that these emotions form a shell around our head and keep following us all around is because we have tried to suppress them for a long time. If it is fear that you feel, which was the huge case for me, huge amount of fear about life, uncertainty, insecurity, fearing people, fearing judgments, fearing hatred, fearing yellers, people yelling all the time at me, because that's what I got. I needed to sit with that fear, in order to do which I had to bring myself back to all those scenes, as many as I could recollect. So I just sit and I'd recall every single thing, every single instance of that moment where I first acquired the fear. And believe me, when you do this exercise, and you're not just recalling it as an image floating by, and instead you're getting so deeply engrossed in it that you no longer see yourself as a separate you and experience it more like living it, reliving it all over, that's when the true emotions will start to arise. If I do it right now, if I bring myself to the exact scene and lose myself in the little kid who saw so much slapping in front of her, if I lose myself in it, it still gives me the shivers. And you can actually see it in the video. The same thing is going to happen for you. I want you to feel that profundity, that profundity of the emotion, which right now you don't want to look at anymore, but which keeps coming back to you in little flashes and tries to draw your attention back because you never processed it fully in the first place. You didn't have the capacity to understand it the way it needed to be. So I want you to spend time recalling each and every one of these emotions. For example, I'll give you an example. If you came from a home of a lot of trauma or a childhood of a lot of trauma, wherever it is you derived it from, what you may have learned by now, you may have read from articles or books or heard from people, is that you have probably derived a lot of low self esteem as you grew up. You probably didn't know how to see yourself as worthy of the person that you really are. Probably because you were rejected, or because you were shamed for being who it is you are, or because you saw so much violence around you that you believed in that violence as the status quo of life in general. So you believed that you were unworthy of anything better, that this is what you were worthy of, which ultimately amounts to mean that you don't deserve a good life. So what you realized, or maybe you will realize now, is that because of that growth environment, you developed a lot of self-esteem which was far lower than what is considered as normal, which was not the self-loving kind, which invalidated all of itself. And hence, it's very easy for you to beat yourself up. It's very easy for you to imbibe criticism from others. It is very easy for you to self doubt. It is very easy for you to raise a wall up, defend against yourself. You keep swinging from one side to the other, while some of you swing towards the side of becoming too defensive and aggressive. Others swing towards the side of hating oneself. Both are manifestations of low self esteem. You can completely heal from low self esteem by learning to sit with all these emotions in that shell that I spoke of that keep following you everywhere. Understand that the residuals of these emotions and impressions that walk around with you, these residuals are seeking your attention and they're constantly desiring that you look at them and not push them away because you have decided that you don't want to carry them along. But let's not forget that these impressions and the emotions that you gave birth to, they're parts of you now, and they deserve your love. Which is why it's so important to revisit all those moments of pain exactly as they were, and that you require quiet time and space to do this. When you slowly and steadily drag yourself back to every single thing that happened on that night, on that day, and you feel it as if it is happening right now. If you saw your father hate your mom, recall the exact scene that first appears in your head. Now, don't just recall it like an image floating by. Sit with it. What were you doing at that time? Were you standing outside the door where it was happening? Did you peek inside? What was your age? What did you hear? What words were being flung? Did someone get hit? Was the sound of that hitting very hard? Did it make you cringe? Did it cause your heart to miss a beat? Did it make you cry? Did you want to run away? Did you want to bang the door open and ask them to stop? Or were you too scared to do that but wanted it very hard? What do you feel? Did you rush back to your room and start crying? Did you feel so helpless that you vomited? Did you feel so helpless that you wanted to run out of the house and get the neighbors to come and help you? Did you want to go inside and yell at the one who was hurting and who was yelling at the other? What exactly did you feel? What emotions came inside of you? Were you finding life difficult? Did the prospect of going to school the next day seem like an enormous burden on your head? Was there homework and tests which you had to do that night, which seemed absolutely impossible to handle? Were the teachers in school strict ones who you knew would beat you up if you didn't finish homework on time? Did it seem like a trap? Did life seem like a trap where you could no longer carry forward with the image sitting in your head, the image of what you just saw, and yet know very well that life would anyways go forward, and it was a school day the following day, which you'd have to wade through with the discipline that the school required of you, failing to do which would bring you more hatred from the school people. Did life seem like a burden? Did you really have nobody to talk to at that time? Were you entirely alone? Did you know that did you feel hopeless that while there was a possibility that you could go and speak to your teachers about it, that doing that would invariably put your parents' reputation in danger and that they could come and punish you? So that knowing caused you to keep it all soaked inside of yourself, where you carried all the pain inside and swallowed the bitter pill, and went ahead with all the homework and schoolwork and put on a smile at your prayer hall and in front of your teacher. Did you did you find it difficult to play in the field with your friends the other day? Did you envy your friends when you stood at the bus stand seeing loving parents coming forward, holding their child, the father and mother in an embrace? Or did you see someone being embraced by their dad, being filled with words of love and utterances of validation of a child's worth, when comparing that to how you were rejected by your parents and were emotionally neglected by your parents? When comparing to that, you felt like life was really, really unfair to you, and it never was for your friend. And while in that age you didn't recognize the emotion that came through, you now recognize it as jealousy, a helpless kind of jealousy. Is that what you felt? Or where your sibling desired a lot more than you, where your sibling praised because she got good grades, and you were never desired as much because somehow you slogged through school and you were the bitter nuisance one. You somehow couldn't make it through as fluidly as your sibling. So she was the one who was cherished, and you went through life pretty unceremoniously. What's the scene you recall? Was it of your father raving about your sibling right in front of you, raving about her accolades in front of guests, knowing, despite knowing you were around, despite knowing despite the very open-ended implication that you were incapable of getting them, given your list of performances in school? Did you feel unwanted in your own home? Did you feel that you came into this world to be unloved? Did you feel the same the second day, the next day that you went to school, where once again you were forced to do homework with all that pain inside of your head? Schoolwork, sorry. Where you were forced to do schoolwork with all that pain inside of your head, follow that discipline order with all that pain inside of your head. Did you feel lonely? Because whatever happened inside of your home was away from the public eye, and somewhere in your juvenile mind, you knew that your parents really were all that you depended on, and breaching anything against them would fall on a deaf ear because you were a child. Did you feel that if your parents didn't want you, who would? Nobody. Is that what you felt? Were there times when you wanted to sit down and cry, but your parents didn't bother? Were there times when you wanted to sit down and cry, but because you knew somewhere that as a son it would look funny to cry, or that a pain like this could not be articulated in proper words, not to your parents at least? Did you feel absolutely trapped? Because in your life, you simply did not know whom to walk up to and speak about this. Did you feel trapped? Because you knew that whoever it was that you would stand up to, did you feel trapped? Because you knew somewhere in your juvenile mind that whoever it was you'd seek help from would tell you, they are your parents. Respect them. Don't speak like that. They want your best. Did you appreciate at that point that you really were alone in your pain? And there was literally nobody who would understand your pain. Or maybe you were so locked in this particular advice by somebody else that you suppressed the emotion of being unwanted that you felt because somebody else chose to tell you that they're not valid. They don't have a place. Push them away. That's not what a respectful daughter or a respectful son should do. When in fact, your feeling absolutely had a place. Feelings don't come just like that. They demand the same degree of nurturing as as your basic needs of a shelter, home, a shelter, food, and clothing. Society won't tell you that, but that's the truth. Were you sexually abused by somebody close in your life? Anybody? Did you feel trapped that speaking of this would invariably direct all points at you? That there's no way you could get your parents to believe what happened? That there's no way that they would understand that you were the victim? Or did you feel that speaking about this pain would be suppressed entirely by your abuser to the point where you would be your stature of being a kid, a juvenile being, would be turned against you by stating that you're deluded? Or did you feel that when you were sexually abused, any amount of utterance of what happened to you could bring danger to your family? Did you fear the consequences that were up against the mere utterance of such pain? What did you feel? What do you suppress even today by saying, oh, it's past, I processed it, it's completely fine, I'm good? Do you see that you have hardened your spirit when in fact there's an emotion at the bottom of it all that is constantly seeking your attention and will not go away no matter how much of a shell you create around you, how much you raise your guard? Or did your parents tell you that you are bad, unworthy, unlovable, the worst kid ever? Did your parents ever say, I must have made some mistake in my previous life, which is why I have a daughter like you? This is something I had to hear, by the way. Did your parents ever say something like this? What did you feel when you hear it? Hatred? Did you feel shards of hate being flung at you? Did you feel that no matter what degree of hard work, what degree of meditation, therapy, making good friends, maybe addictions, alcohol, smoke, what degree of goodness you tried to bring into the world, you would always be hated by people at your own home? That it didn't stand to amount to anything because the shards of hate would ever be brought into the purview of your mind by the very people at home, the ones you live with, the ones you are interaction with on and off. Did you feel that? Be honest with yourself. This is not a place where you just keep it hidden. This is where you let it all bare. And I don't care if you're a boy or if you're a man. Let the tears flow. Who the hell said that men shouldn't cry? Let the hell tears come out. Nothing is written in time that states that men shouldn't cry. Makes absolutely no sense. So cut out that toughness. That's just a hardened shell, which you use to cope with, to look away from the emotions that are literally at your feet for attention. And you're choosing to look away, meaning you're choosing to deny a part of yourself. No matter how hard this sounds, no matter how much you choose not to believe any of what I'm saying, this is the truth. For me, healing came not through meditation, therapy, or any of all those things. They gave me an illusion of healing to make me realize I was back to square one. And as I rebound back to square one, it seemed all these modern day therapies really get you nowhere. And the one thought that stuck to my head thereafter was, what the what was the point of doing all this hard work when somehow the memories and emotions and the way they pull my leg are relentless? They they seem they seem so sticky. They seem not to be going. They seem not to leave me. They seem to have decided that they'll be with me forever. That's the point I realized that no amount of looking away will help me. At least I'm not fortunate in this lifetime to have the privilege to look away or to have the privilege to not look away and be okay. Because the moment I made that decision to not look away, I realized what was coming, that I would be back to all the pain. So I realized that looking away is of no use for me. Going back to the emotions is the only way. The root emotions. The root emotions of being denied for who it is I was. The root emotion of feeling hate, for being presented with hate all the time. The root emotion of everything being so unfair for me. Why was I given so much pain? That's the root emotion I struggle with even today. So, coming back to my emotions, while it may tear me up and feel quite unpleasant, it is where I realize the fighting against that war between where it is I want to go, the space of freedom, and the and what my reality is like. In this space of being all present with the emotion, I realize that war melts away. The emotions were seeking my attention. And I know that they'll be a part of me for the rest of my life. Carrying them, carrying them along is part of that journey. Because as I carry these emotions with me, it is the equivalent of carrying the whole of me, the person I am, a part of me that grieves, that has grieved, and that feels somewhat hopeless because of experiences that it has seen. You cannot fully heal unless you've released these emotions that are seeking your attention. You cannot suppress them by saying, I love myself, I am enough, I am amazing. No, these emotions will come back. Whether you want to look away from them by being hard on yourself, or by being aggressive, or by being narcissistic and all confident and being someone who doesn't require human emotions to go along, or by being someone who hates oneself. Whether you are choosing to guard yourself by being the stoic, or by choosing to feel unlovable the whole time, however you do it, the emotions will never leave you. The bottom emotions that you're looking away from will never ever leave you until and unless you sit with them and genuinely nurture them. There is simply no other way. Motivational speakers, therapy, they come later. This has to come first. And it cannot come by you sitting and just rewinding back to specific moments and then playing them like films in a playlist and stating that, okay, this is what happened, that's what happened, yeah, I felt it, I didn't deserve it. and then I'm done. No. You walk back into the home that you don't want to look back at. You walk back to the emotion as if you were living every single fragment of it right now. You walk back to the emotion as if you have merged with that version of you, that naive version that had no clue that life was about to get so rotten and was going to come down so heavy upon your meek and innocent self when you may have been doing something that was pleasant and things were going fine. You'll have to sit with that moment. Maybe you have faced thousands of such moments, in which case you will have to sit with each and every moment, one by one, no matter how much deep, no matter how much deeply painful this feels. You will have to sit with them and then be absolutely 100% present with that emotion and tell it once you are there, and tell that emotion, I would have you no other way because you are me. Just the exact way you seek acceptance from people around you is the exact way these emotions seek acceptance from you. These emotions keep rising because you never give them a chance to reveal their actual selves to you. Emotions cannot go by resistance, they need presence. Whatever you resist will always persist. You will see this in your life. What are you resisting right now? Is there a thought you're constantly resisting? Perhaps you're scared that something will happen in your life, something bad. You're trying to resist that thought. You haven't even bothered thinking of it in terms of a solvable problem, where you decide that okay, this is what's happening, this is what could happen, but I'll figure a way out. No, you're resisting the prospect of something horrifying happening at some point. How many times in the day does that thought reappear? How many? You will see they keep reappearing almost the entire day. You'll be bugged the hell out of it. The exact same thing happens with your emotions. Just because you're putting up an armor, steel armor of valor and bravery, don't even think that the emotion you're guarding against, the bottom emotion that you are too afraid to look at, isn't gonna keep following you, because it will. All right, that's it. I'm signing off. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and please click that subscribe button for future videos on this topic to help you heal from all the traumatic emotions that you acquired in a way that no therapy has ever told you before. So please hit that subscribe button right now and drop me a comment below and tell me what you thought about it. What part of it produced an aha inside of you and created an alternate perspective for you? Let me know. And please share this video with a friend who you think will be benefited from it. please tell the friend that he or she will require an open mind to actually derive 100% benefit from the video. Check out my website at www.nilanjanahaldar.com, which you can click from the description below over there. I post an email every week as part of my newsletter, which you can join and be fed with the regular, barely noticed tips that you can incorporate into your life, which will help you grow far more deeply than just these surface level YouTube videos can help. So please come and join the newsletter and help yourself all the more. Enjoy and have a good week.